targets are moving too fast.
For decades, enemy radar operators would stare at their screens and feel something wasn't right. Blips would smear, signals would bend, missiles would lose guidance. Entire air defense networks would suddenly act confused. They blamed bad weather. They blamed equipment faults. They blamed their technicians. They were wrong. It was the Northrop Grumman EA-6B Prowler. And in 2015, after 44 years of U.S. Navy service, the Navy retired it. Not because it failed, not because it embarrassed itself, but because modern warfare moved somewhere it couldn't fully follow. So here's the first real question. How does an aircraft dominate invisible warfare for nearly half a century and still get replaced before becoming untouchable? To answer that, we have to go back to 1968. That's when the Prowler first flew. It officially entered service in 1971 at the height of the Vietnam War. And unlike sleek fighters built for glory, the Prowler was born for something far less glamorous: electronic warfare. Fun fact, the EA-6B carried 4 crew members, 1 pilot, and 3 electronic countermeasures officers. 3 specialists just to manage signals. That alone tells you something. This jet wasn't fighting other aircraft. It was fighting physics. Its backbone was the ALQ-99 jamming system. Pods mounted under the wings, capable of blasting powerful electronic interference across enemy radar frequencies. Let me ask you something. What's more dangerous, a jet you can see flying toward you, or one that quietly erases your ability to see anything at all? Exactly. The Prowler didn't punch you in the face. It turned off the lights. During Vietnam, U.S. aircraft were taking heavy losses from radar-guided surface-to-air missiles. Surface-to-air systems like the SA-2 were lethal. Strike packages were flying into dense radar nets. The Prowler stepped in as the shield. It jammed search radars. It jammed fire control radars. And if an enemy radar refused to shut down, the Prowler could launch the AGM-88 HARM, a missile that literally homes in on radar emissions. Radar on, you're dead. Radar off, you're blind. Pick one. Now, here's a fun but underrated fact. In Operation Desert Storm in 1991, not a single U.S. aircraft was lost to radar-guided Iraqi SAM systems during the early air campaign, largely because electronic warfare aircraft like the Prowler had already degraded those networks. That's not flashy, but that's decisive. So if it was that effective, why retire it? You've probably heard the surface answer. It was old. Sure. The Prowler's lineage traced back to the Grumman A6 Intruder. That airframe family was born in the 1960s. By the 2000s, where some Prowlers had accumulated more than 20,000 flight hours. Carrier operations are brutal. Catapult launches, arrested landings, saltwater corrosion, metal ages, physics wins. Operating cost in its later years was estimated roughly between $20,000 and $25,000 per flight hour. Not catastrophic, but maintenance hours were increasing. Parts were aging. Supply chains were shrinking. But here's the real twist. It wasn't grounded for being ineffective. It was still deployed over Iraq and Afghanistan in the 2000s. Marine Corps Prowlers continued flying combat missions until 2019. So, clearly, it still worked. Which leads us to the bigger question. If it still worked, why not just upgrade it again? Because electronic warfare stopped being about brute power. It became about digital precision. In the 1970s and 80s, you could overwhelm radar with noise. By the 2000s, adversary systems used frequency hopping, digital filtering, key and networked air defense grids. Jamming became software warfare, adaptive, smart, integrated. The Prowler received upgrades, new processors, improved receivers, better integration. But its architecture was built in an analog era. Upgrading legacy architecture is like renovating a 1960s skyscraper to support modern fiber optic infrastructure. Possible? Yes. Efficient? That's debatable. Now, here's where the authority taunt comes in. And the Navy was also trying to simplify its carrier decks. The FA-18 Hornet family was becoming dominant. Shared engines, shared parts, shared maintenance training. And then came the Boeing EA-18G Growler, built from the Super Hornet platform. 2 crew instead of 4, fully digital architecture from birth, designed to plug directly into network-centric warfare. So, let's ask the uncomfortable question. Did the Prowler lose because it was weak? Or did it lose because the Pentagon prefers fleet commonality over niche excellence? Maintaining a unique 4-seat aircraft with a separate airframe lineage meant duplicated logistics pipelines. Separate maintenance ecosystems, separate training tracks. In modern defense budgeting, duplication is a liability, even if the aircraft works beautifully. So in 2015, the U.S. Navy retired the EA-6B Prowler. The Marine Corps followed in 2019. 44 years of Navy service, and nearly 5 decades of electronic dominance. Gone, quietly, no scandal, no crash that ended its career, just a transition ceremony. Was the Prowler a failure? No. Did it lose a war? No. Did it grow irrelevant? No. It lost a modernization argument, and that might be the most unsettling ending of all, because it means excellence is not always enough. Warfare changed from signal brute force to integrated digital networks. The Growler fit that future more cleanly, more efficiently, more sustainably. And in military planning, sustainability beats nostalgia every time. But here's the human part. Talk to Prowler crews and you'll hear pride. They flew missions where their success meant no headlines. If they did their job perfectly, no one noticed. Strike fighters returned safely. Missiles failed to guide. Enemy radars malfunctioned mysteriously. Electronic warfare is the art of making chaos look accidental. The Prowler mastered that art for nearly half a century. So now I'll ask you the final question. Should the Navy have pushed it into another decade of service? Or did retiring it at its peak preserve its legacy? Because sometimes the loudest aircraft aren't the most powerful. Sometimes the most powerful aircraft are the ones that make everyone else quiet. And for almost 50 years, the Prowler controlled the invisible battlefield. Not with speed, not with glamour, but with silence. And in modern war, silence is a weapon. If you enjoy powerful stories from the world of military aviation, subscribe to Elevon and join us as we uncover the machines.